Hello, this is Mariah Cruz, and you're listening to the Spiritual Deep Dives podcast. What if the disciples of Jesus were not poor, uneducated followers, but spiritually initiated family members chosen through multiple lifetimes to fulfill a mission never fully explained by Christianity? The story of Jesus didn't begin or end with the Gospels. In this podcast series, we venture beyond the familiar pages of Scripture and into the missing years, post-resurrection appearances, and the deeper spiritual truths hidden within his teachings. Drawing from the wisdom of the ascended masters, historical research, and ancient spiritual traditions, we will explore Jesus as a divine man who walked a path of mastery that revealed the true science of spiritual enlightenment and soul liberation. This series was researched and is presented by Joseph and Stephen Macchio, respected lecturers on ancient and modern spiritual teachings and authors of the Orthodox Christian Conspiracy. Be sure and check the show notes for links to the resources mentioned in this episode. So let's dive in to episode 20.
Welcome to Uncovering the Spiritual and Historical Life of Jesus. This is episode 20. I am Stephen Macchio.
I'm Joseph Macchio.
And in our last episode, we were talking about the disciples of Jesus, just beginning that talk. And that is the subject of our episode today.
Yes.
The disciples of Jesus.
So Jesus actually began calling his disciples pretty early on. It took quite a while to call all of them. He actually called several disciples before his baptism, some after. Many of these names are not even familiar to us beyond the 12. So according to one specific visionary, Jesus called his disciples, but initially he didn't really expect a total commitment from some of them at the first time he called them. He called them more than once until he gave them leave, actually, to make a full commitment.
So that's already a major divergent course from what we have seen in the life of Jesus, whether it was a film, a TV series.
Yeah.
It's obvious what we've all seen. The guy's just, unaware. He walks up, turns around, and it's over. He follows him.
He follows
Just gets up and follows. Doesn't ask any questions. It's like preordainedness to the maximum.
Yeah, preordained. And of course, we know that, it was preordained in the sense that they took embodiment, as we read and mentioned previously. But this is true. This is another divergence from the usual understanding or orthodox, presentation in the media, whatever media you want to use. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the 12 disciples, the 12 ones, and name them. And so it's very interesting to know that the information we're giving you is from various sources, from visionaries, Catherine Emmerich, from a book called The Drama of the 12 Disciples, In Search of the 12 Apostles by McBurney, Edgar Casey's readings. So we're going to present this information. You can either accept it or not accept it, but from what I understand, it's fairly accurate what we're presenting because we've gone through several sources, and many of them actually say the same things.
Yes.
So the first 6 disciples that we're going to be naming were first cousins of Jesus.
That's already amazing.
That's already amazing, but most people don't know that. So the first one we're going to of the 6 is Simon, son of Alphaeus, Alphaeus. Now, Alphaeus was St. Joseph's brother, and Alphaeus married Mary Cleopas, and her name does appear in the New Testament. So right there we have a first cousin. Simon was also a member of the Zealot party.
Yes, I remember you talking about
that.
The
Zealot party came into being with Judas of Galilee, who wanted to fight against the Roman occupation, and he was executed. But this party remained all the way up till, the actual rebellion against Rome, which took place like 66 to 70 AD. So Simon was a zealot. He's called Simon the Zealot. Then we have James, son of Alphaeus. James was also in a scene. So James, again, is Alphaeus' son, Jesus' first cousin. Then we come to Matthew, another son of Alphaeus. Matthew was married and had 4 children. So when he was sitting there as a tax collector and Jesus says, "Follow me,"
right,
he had to think, I have a wife and 4 kids.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that Matthew immediately got up and followed Jesus, but they had a full understanding of what his situation was. That doesn't come out necessarily in the Gospels or in these ancient texts. Then we have Thaddeus, another son of Alphaeus, also known as Jude Thaddeus. So those were 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4. So now we have James, son of Zebedee. That's a familiar name from the Gospel. Zebedee was Mother Mary's brother, and therefore the son of Anna and Joachim. So he was Jesus' uncle, obviously, and he owned a very thriving fishing business.
And we're going to find this throughout, where
we are.
These various disciples are not poor people dressed in rags, almost like a burlap sack is on them in some of the movies that I've seen. And they're just roaming the streets or fishing and hoping to make some kind of a living. Yet, when you own a thriving fishing business, that's not the case.
No, it's not the case.
He doesn't have to be there all the time.
No, he was very well off financially, Zebedee. So we have James, son of Zebedee. Then we have John, also a son of Zebedee, also known as John the Beloved. He was also a disciple of John the Baptist before he was a disciple of Jesus.
Very interesting.
So those are the 6 first cousins. Did I count 6 there?
Yeah, that's why I put numbers by him.
2,
I got 6 next to John.
Good.
You're covered.
I'm covered.
If it wasn't for me, it'd be all...
I don't know what I would have. What would happen? So those are the first 6. Then we have Simon Peter, son of Jonah or John of Bethsaida. Now, Peter's father, Jonah or John, was the actual crewmaster of Zebedee. So Zebedee hired Peter's father, Jonah. So Simon Peter owned ships. He had servants. Zebedee owned ships and had servants. His son Peter also owned at least 3 vessels. And a smaller vessel was used for Jesus and his disciples. And if you remember, Jesus does use a vessel sometimes to sleep in.
Yes.
Sometimes actually to teach in when the crowds come close to him at the shore. Then he gives a sermon from the ship. So this was the smaller vessel that was used. So Peter himself also had servants. He was involved with an agricultural business and other businesses. And we know that he was married.
Right. That's a proven fact. So we have several wealthy disciples.
They're very well off. Then we have Andrew, son of Jonah, Peter's brother. He was also first a disciple of John the Baptist. And Andrew actually assisted Jesus at his baptism. He was on one side, and Saturnin, another disciple that we don't know about from the Gospels, escorted Jesus to his baptism and assisted him. We have now Philip of Bethsaida. So we have this town, Bethsaida. We have Peter also of that town. Now, some of you know that there is actually a very controversial text called the Gospel of Philip, which isn't actually a gospel per se, which has many controversial teachings and statements. So we will perhaps be reading some excerpts from the Gospel of Philip. So that's Philip. Then we have Nathaniel Bartholomew, or Talmai means son of Talmai, Talmai. It become a name. People are called Bartholomew, but that simply means son of Talmai. Now, Church Father Jerome actually says that Nathaniel, son of Talmai, may have been of noble birth, possibly actually lineage going back to a king of Geshur, which is mentioned in the Old Testament, which was in the area of what we now know as the Golan Heights. This can't be proved, but that's what Jerome thinks. And
interesting.
He must have done some research. Then we have Thomas from the island, or actually from Cyrene, which is North Africa. Now, Thomas also is known as Judas Thomas, or Judas the twin, because Thomas means twin in Aramaic.
I see.
In Greek, it's Didymus. So, Thomas the twin. Now, he's supposed to have written down and did write down the cryptic sayings of Jesus called the Gospel of Thomas, which we've mentioned. Very cryptic. Now, some scholars actually believe that it was Jesus' brother Jude who wrote the Gospel and the letter of Jude in the New Testament. I personally think it was Thomas, from what my research has been and what, Mrs. Prophet has also stated.
Okay.
So it's very interesting. So then we have Judas Iscariot, who was the treasurer. He kept the funds for all of the disciples. We do know what happened about Judas, that he did betray Jesus. He was put upon by the fallen ones. He had a role to play, and that was the role of betrayer. And interestingly enough, Judas Iscariot did make the ascension. And it wasn't from that life, we know, that he took his own life.
Yes.
But Judas was so full of repentance, sorrow, and grief that he re-embodied, and I don't know the years on this, and he became an actual priest. And it was that second embodiment, because of his tremendous love
and remorse
that he did make the ascension. Now, in the 1970s, the Masters and Elizabeth Prophet have stated to us that most of the apostles that we have just named continued to reincarnate throughout the entire age of Pisces unto the present hour as we sit here. The ones that are an exception are John the Beloved, who ascended at the end of that life in somewhere around 98, AD. We also know that James, the brother of John, son of Zebedee, also made the ascension, but that ascension was made at the close of the 20th century, somewhere about 1970 or 71. So most of these did reincarnate, and we will get to the scene of the Last Supper where it was stated, and we will be repeating this, that many of these apostles took the Bodhisattva vow, but some destiny it was to ascend. As I say, most of them are still in embodiment. But since the 1970s, some others could have ascended. We don't really know.
Right.
But it's certainly possible.
And that concept of Bodhisattva vow, or staying in an embodiment also for mission's sake alone, you have that option too. So, it's helpful for us and people listening that just because you're in embodiment now does not mean that you had some lives that were very good, yet you progressed, tremendous progression in the understanding of your own Christ self and your own divinity. But for mission's sake, you're still here in embodiment until that specific lifetime that your mission is fulfilled. You see, the idea that, if you balance your karma and you bond to your Christ self, you just automatically ascend isn't 100% true, because you also have to fulfill your mission. And so if you fulfill your mission, but you have that going for you, well, then all the better. But you also have to fulfill the specific mission that you came here for, and you transcend what your original intent was to come here. So that you have these things working as to why some of these disciples, or anyone for that matter, did not make their ascension. Because you could look back in history and you see some people who are extremely advanced spiritually, and then you realize that, they had another embodiment. It's like, oh my God, I remember myself saying, if that guy didn't ascend, I'm done. It's over. Forget it. But you realize that, no, it's mission. And if you keep that in the forefront of your mind, you'll be better off, and you don't get into that spiral of deciding that, I'm never going to make it like I once did. And I'm still here, So I'm glad that you're talking about
like that.
Yeah, we need this kind of encouragement to keep going. Another life. All right. So you were going to name the disciples, or you were talking about who ascended? Did anyone else ascend?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm talking about the 12 disciples. We know Mother Mary. We know we're going to get into Mary Magdalene later. So so the messenger has explained that these 12 disciples actually formed a sacred mandala, and they held the balance for each of the 12 solar hierarchies. Now, I know this is a whole nother teaching, but the 12 solar hierarchies are simply the 12 signs of the zodiac, and each of those signs is a certain quality and a certain path and a certain initiation. So they held the balance. Jesus is in the center, number 13, which is not an unlucky number. Jesus is 13 in the center, and the apostles holding the balance also, interestingly enough, of the 12 tribes. Now remember, these 12 apostles were previously Joseph's brothers when he wore the coat of many colors. He was betrayed and sent to Egypt. We know that story. So again, these are reincarnated from that period. They also represent the 12 tribes, the 12 signs of the zodiac, which is the same 12 solar hierarchies. So this is a whole nother teaching that is gone through in great detail in this book, The Path of Brotherhood. Pages 153 to 174, it says the 12 apostles, and it's extremely detailed with diagrams showing where each apostle stands, what their initiation was. And if we get into this, this will last like 6 months. If we go into detail on many of these teachings, so I just want everybody to be aware of that. If you want to go into greater detail, then this is the book for you, The Path of Brotherhood, pages 153 to 174, the 12 disciples.
Now that's interesting because we know that Gautama Buddha had 5 disciples that created a mandala around him.
Yes.
And that was symbolized by the 5-pointed star. And on each point of the star was a specific disciple of Gautama that held a specific balance. So again, we're just realizing that, whether it's 5 or 12 or 3 or whatever, it's always the same matrix. There's always the one in the center. You have the 12 disciples, and Jesus would be the 13th in the center. You always have a mandala surrounding that avatar or that enlightened one, and it's a common thing.
Yeah, it is a common thing. And of course, with Jesus, because he was so close to the history of Israel, having many embodiments, during the Old Testament period, Gautama's mandala was different.
Right.
It was a whole different mandala. 5 secret rays, perhaps. So these disciples that Jesus had, that were the first cousins, was also brought up in the Essene tradition. So Jesus himself was conversant with many Essene teachers, and he shared certain secrets of his mission with these particular Essene teachers. So there's various stories in the Gospels, as we said, come follow me. They knew who he was. They knew his background, especially the ones who were cousins. They didn't have a big problem.
Right.
with dropping everything at some point and following him. And of course, Jesus shared with them a lot of information from the East.
Yes.
Like, for instance, Jesus shared with them a meditation that he learned in the East where you visualize a very white flame, a pure white flame in the palm of the hand for healing purposes. And you visualize that, and then you have healing hands. You place your hand and it becomes a healing hand. Why? Because you've meditated, you've visualized, you've seen this white flame. So there are many, many meditations, yogic practices that Jesus did, shared with his apostles, but you can't find this in the Old Testament.
Right.
He had a yoga that he shared with his disciples. All gurus share their yoga with their disciples, but you don't find that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So now we're going to go to the wedding at Cana.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. This is an amazing story also.
Now this is from John chapter 2, verses 1 to 11. Now we have some extra information from a visionary called Catherine Emmerich, other sources. So we know that Jesus began his, quote, public mission with the marriage at Cana. So according to this particular visionary, which is very interesting, Jesus supplied the wine and the main meal. He actually supplied one course of the banquet. And Lazarus defrayed the expenses for Jesus, but only Mary and Jesus and Lazarus knew that. Jesus brought 25 disciples with him, including Mary, Martha, Lazarus. They came up from Bethany. So by his first public mission, he had many, many disciples, but that doesn't really come across in the Gospels because you just have, all of a sudden there's this wedding, but we don't know what happened prior to that necessarily. So Jesus arranged and took part in games. He arranged some of the games. He gave instruction and comments on the games and the ceremonies at the wedding. There apparently were about 100 guests. And so the bride's father was a very opulent merchant. He was very well off, very wealthy. So also, when Jesus changed the water into wine, everyone felt different and more spiritual. And that is the reason why Mother Mary said to her son, they don't have any wine left. Jesus already supplied the wine. It was his responsibility. But when he said, he kind of didn't want to continue that because he knew this was going to be an alchemical miracle.
Right.
Not that it was a miracle, but it was a science of alchemy that he would be changing the substance. So it meant, okay, I'm about to begin my public mission and I probably know where it's going to end,
Right. And I remember in a lecture by Elizabeth Clare Prophet talking about that.
Yeah.
And the delay was there was a certain amount of trepidation for Jesus to perform this miracle in public because he knew, like you're saying, that this is the beginning of this 3-year mission. So he was kind of hesitant, but that's why his mother goes, go do whatever he asks.
You're right. Right.
And he has to do it. So the mother intervenes and says, we're going forward. We're going to do it. And of course he's going to obey and he goes ahead with it. But it's very interesting. Also, I remember reading that from Catherine Emmerich, and there was also spiritual teaching given specifically to the bride and the groom.
Yes.
And he would take them away into another room. And those games they weren't just games just to have fun.
No.
The games themselves had spiritual teachings. They had to pick things from a hat, and when they took it out, there was a reading, some kind of a scriptural, not scriptural in a sense, but a cryptic meaning, and they had to figure out what this was. So conversation at the wedding was, thinking about what is he trying to tell us here?
Yes.
I mean, they know. So he's never not teaching.
Right. I was going to say that. Yeah.
Jesus is not just the kind of guy who goes, so you know what? take a day off today, go to the wedding, see what happens. I'll start my mission tomorrow, whatever.
Yeah, no.
I don't have to be too concerned.
Yeah.
Have a little wine, have a party. No, his consciousness is not there. It is in the sense that he's going to go to a public marriage. He's invited. He's well known. All the people there, are well known. So he doesn't like put it off. Oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm too spiritual. You'll never hear from Jesus that he's like in his ivory tower and that's too good for me. I'm not going to go hang out with those people. They drink or they might. He is so tethered to reality.
Yes.
As an avatar that it is absolutely astounding. And that's why I particularly like reading the Catherine Emmerich and other sources of the life of Jesus, because it brings a realism to the mission, and you can take that realism and apply it to yourself immediately, because we do those things. Yeah. We go to parties, we go to Christmas parties, we go to whatever, and it doesn't mean that you're not spiritual.
No. And you're right. He, every single thing he did at the wedding was a teaching.
Yes.
But it was made fun.
Yeah.
Like you said.
Yeah. People were laughing, he's joking around.
I
mean, there was one case where he went off and took the knife and the fork and started carving the lamb, and he would pass out the lamb, and he carved it for the people. So he wasn't the kind of guy to sit there and goes, "I'm Jesus, serve me." No, he was involved in everything. And it's quite astounding, because she goes on for a very long time in tremendous detail.
Pages and pages and pages of detail
on just
about
the
this
wedding feast. And who are the people that invite Jesus? It's like from the gospel, you're going, wait, what? Someone's having a wedding, so I think I'll call Jesus and, invite him to the wedding? There's much more connectedness than we're led to believe when you just read these little snippets of the gospels.
The mother of the bride and groom were connected in some way to Jesus' family, but it wasn't, an obvious outward connection. But there was a connection going back. So they weren't by any means strangers.
Right.
So, this is actually the first time that he was saying he revealed himself in community activities.
Yes.
A whole 100 people. It never happened. This is the first time it happened. Now, the other interesting thing is that concerning the disciples, during Jesus' mission, his disciples continued to baptize thousands over the course of 3 years.
Oh, now, that's never talked about.
You see this. Now, there's one sentence in the Gospel of John where it says his disciples baptized, though Jesus himself did not baptize. And this is true. Jesus did not baptize, but he baptized through the disciples. Where the disciple was, Jesus was. But this is constantly happening. Where Jesus goes, the length and breadth of Palestine, they're always baptizing.
So that also means that they already have some invested authority.
Yes.
Given to them by Jesus and of themselves. But when you watch the various Christian films on the life of Jesus, they're just following him almost dumbly. And in some of the episodes I've seen, they're talking to each other as like, do we still believe him? Do you think this is a good idea to follow him? And they're having these ridiculous conversations. They never show what you just said. They never show them baptizing. I mean, if you're going to baptize someone, you have to have an inner understanding of what you're doing.
Yes.
And the mystery behind it.
Yeah.
And so it just goes to show that many of the disciples are on top of it. They know what's going on.
Oh, definitely.
Whether they stick to it or not, if they have issues during this time, well, that happens to everybody.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that they don't know what's going on.
No.
So it's very important to bring these points out, I think.
And you had to wear a certain baptismal gown. It wasn't just, quick and fast. It was more ceremonial.
Yeah. Now, before we close this section for this episode, I just wanted to also say that I just remembered that Jesus' attire at the wedding was impeccable. When Jesus dressed, he dressed beautifully. He had beautiful robes, and the robes many times were embroidered with the most detailed, magnificent, beautiful embroidery you can imagine. And many of the holy women, did that for him because that's what they did. But there was never a time that Jesus was walking around the streets in kind of a rag type of same color. I mean, you see the same color. It's like he never changed his robe ever. Well, he changed his clothes a lot, all the time.
Yes.
He wore specific colors
for
specific events.
Yeah.
And I just want to close by just saying that he was impeccably dressed. He had a lot of wealth, not he himself per se.
No.
But the people recognized who he was, especially the holy women.
Yeah.
And they took care of his appearance and the way he looked.
Yes,
I mean, he took care of himself also. But, I just wanted to get that across. That
I'm glad you mentioned.
Because I like many people out there, we've seen these movies over and over again. And by only viewing these movies or these TV episodes about Jesus, it does impress upon you, and you get a vision of Jesus as a poor man.
Yeah.
And I just want to eradicate that. He was not poor. He was very well dressed and very well to do. So that's going to close this particular episode. And we will continue in the next episode with the physical appearance of Jesus. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
In our next episode, the Macchios answer the question, what do the Shroud of Turin, esoteric teachings, and hidden spiritual traditions reveal about the true image of Jesus that the Church has never fully explained? Thank you for listening to Spiritual Deep Dives. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to our podcast. We'll catch you in the next episode.